Most beginner investors don't fail because they pick the wrong investment. They fail because they start the wrong way, and that mistake quietly costs them years. Not days, not months, years. And what makes this worse is that most people don't even realize they've made this mistake. They think they're being careful. They think they're being smart. But years later, they look back and wonder why investing never seemed to work for them. In this video, I want to break down the single biggest mistake new investors make, why it's so common, and what actually matters when you're starting, especially if your goal is long-term wealth, not quick wins. And in a few minutes, I'll show you exactly how this mistake plays out in real life and why it's so hard to notice while it's happening. If you're new to investing, you're probably asking questions like, what should I invest in? Is this a good stock? Is now a good time to invest? Those are normal questions, but here's the problem: they're not the most important questions. Most people don't struggle with investing because they lack information. They struggle because they start with the wrong mental framework. When your framework is wrong, every decision feels heavier than it needs to be. Every market dip feels personal. Every choice feels like it could ruin everything. That pressure doesn't make people better investors. It makes them inconsistent ones. And inconsistency is where long-term results quietly fall apart. Quick disclaimer before we go further. This video is for educational purposes only. I'm not a financial advisor, and this isn't personalized financial advice. Everyone's situation is different, so always do your own research or speak with a qualified professional before making decisions. What I'm sharing here are long-term, widely accepted investing principles, not predictions, hype, or guarantees. When people think about investing mistakes, they usually imagine dramatic things. Buying the wrong stock, losing money in a crash, missing the next big opportunity. So beginners naturally obsess over picking the right thing. They compare stocks, funds, apps, and strategies. They watch videos. They wait. They second guess. And slowly, investing starts to feel overwhelming. Because when you believe success depends on one perfect decision, every decision feels dangerous. But here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Long-term investing success doesn't come from being right. It comes from staying invested long enough for compounding to work. And that's where the real mistake begins. The biggest mistake new investors make is this. They fall into what I call the perfect first decision trap. This is the belief that if you just get the first move right, the right investment, the right timing, and the right strategy, then everything else will fall into place. It sounds logical, it feels responsible, but it's wrong, because investing is not a single decision. It's a system you repeat for decades. When people fall into the perfect first decision trap, a few things happen. They hesitate too long. They change strategies too often. They react emotionally to short-term noise. Not because they're reckless, but because their approach was never designed to last. And in a moment, I'll show you why this mistake doesn't usually show up as a big loss. It shows up as something much harder to notice. This mistake almost never blows up your account overnight. That's why it's so dangerous. Instead, it shows up as starting, stopping, restarting. Sitting in cash waiting for the right time. Switching strategies every few years. Each time that happens, you reset the clock. Think of compounding like pushing a snowball uphill at first. Most people quit when it's still small, right before gravity starts helping. Before we move on, it's worth pausing here because this idea isn't just my opinion. Some of the most successful investors in history all point to the same thing: compounding over time. Albert Einstein famously called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. Not because it's complicated, but because of what happens when you give it enough time. Warren Buffett has said that the big money is not in the buying or selling, but in the waiting. And that's easy to miss, because Buffett didn't get wealthy quickly. Most of his net worth came after age 50, not because he suddenly got smarter, but because compounding finally had decades to work. Charlie Munger put it even more bluntly. He said the first rule of compounding is, never interrupt it unnecessarily. And that's exactly what the perfect first decision trap causes people to do: interrupt the process over and over again. None of these people were obsessed with perfect timing. They were obsessed with staying invested long enough for time to do the heavy lifting. Compounding doesn't look impressive in the early years. That's why people abandon it. But once it starts working, it's almost impossible to replicate by skill alone. And this is why the mistake we're talking about today is so costly, because every time you stop, wait, or restart, you're not just losing money, you're losing time, and time is the only thing compounding can't replace. There's a reason why decades of behavioral finance research show that investor behavior matters more than picking the perfect investment. The investors who do best long-term aren't the smartest. They're the most consistent. And now let me make this painfully clear with an example. Imagine two people, same age, same income, same starting point. Person A, the perfect first decision thinker. This person spends months researching. They wait for clarity. They invest when things feel calm and pause when things feel uncertain. They switch strategies when something new sounds better. They're careful but inconsistent. Person B, the system builder. Person B sets up a simple system. They invest regularly. They use diversified, low-cost investments. They ignore headlines. They don't feel confident all the time but they stay invested. 20 years later, Person B almost always ends up ahead. Not because they were smarter. Because they didn't keep resetting the clock. And here's the part most people miss. Person A didn't make one huge mistake. They made dozens of small resets. Now let's talk about a more realistic example. You have a full-time job. You have responsibilities. You don't have hours to research investments every week. You invest when life feels calm. You stop when things get busy or uncertain. That's not laziness. That's a system problem. Without a simple process, investing becomes optional. And optional things don't compound. This is why so many smart, hardworking people struggle with investing, not because they don't care, but because their approach was never built for real life. If you care about building wealth over decades, not months, and you want investing content without hype, trends, or shortcuts, this channel is built for you. Consider subscribing if that's the kind of thinking you want more of. When you're starting out, 3 things matter far more than picking the perfect investment. Regular investing matters more than timing. Simple strategies are easier to stick with and historically effective. Staying calm matters more than being clever. These ideas aren't exciting, but they work. Starting the right way means accepting 3 things. 1. You won't be perfect. 2. You don't need to be brilliant. 3. You just need a system you can maintain. If you avoid the perfect first decision trap, everything else becomes easier. The biggest investing mistake isn't losing money early. It's building an approach you can't stick with. So here's a simple question to leave you with. Are you building a system you can maintain, or are you still searching for the perfect first move? Because the people who build wealth aren't the ones who start perfectly, they're the ones who design a system they don't quit on.